Hey, look, I've been in this crowd before. First of all, I mean, look, I don't know of a better gig. I mean, shout out to the team and James. I mean, this is quite the gig. So it wasn't a surprise to me to see that there are so many returners. It's rare that you return something like this down, so it's good to see you. So listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a brief rundown of my life, hit the highlights and the lowlights. I'm going to have a few takeaways for life, and then I'm going to end with a section on Microwins, which is what I use, my system for getting these big goals accomplished. What I will say, it's been a very interesting Q1, man, I tell you. In the course of the last 2.5 months, I've been to a major manufacturing facility in the Midwest, investment bank in New York, a bottling company in the Southeast, a tech company on the West Coast. And it's all of them are doing their 2024 reports and then the forecast. They got the 25 forecast. It is so fun to listen to all these grand metrics and tables. And the one thing that we know is we don't know. We have absolutely no clue. The economists don't know. Your best stats person doesn't know. Your next neighbor doesn't know. You have no clue what the macroeconomic picture will look like. Forget Q4 tomorrow. So, what I will tell you is this. We've talked about agility and being nimble. I would start preparing my team now to embrace beta. We are in a constant state of change. So the more that your people understand that you understand it as the leader, and they also understand that, we're going to be going through some rapid developments that are going to probably stretch their skill sets in directions that they have not used before, the better off you'll be. Who can read that? Who knows that to be true? Hey, we're going to die. So here's the thing. I can always go back to COVID, 2020, 2021. A lot of us made a lot of promises to ourselves and our families that began something like, when things get back to normal, I am going to insert promise here. It's 25. How's it going? How are you grading out? You're going to spend more time with so-and-so, or you're going to do less of this. And what I will tell you is that, my dad just turned 75, so I was his 75th birthday. I'm on the phone with him this morning, and we're talking. And as James said, Black Baptist minister, East Texas. I'm a 5th generation East Texan. And so we're talking, and, he's, my wife and I have 5 kids. In total, he has 9 grandkids and a couple of great-grands, and he's talking. And he's talking about this thing called time, right? And this is a man who has officiated hundreds of weddings and funerals. But our conversation was a good reminder that we have to be as intentional as we possibly can with the minutes that we have while we have them. This is why I'm always urging people around me. I'm 46, I'll be 47 in November, and I've got a group of law school classmates and buddies. We go out on a trip every year, and all of them are putting off trips with their families until retirement. I said, look, who knows if we're going to get there? I know that there were some people in this audience in 23 who are not here today. So it's great to have fun and see each other and do deals. Let's try to be as intentional as we can with the minutes. Can we get 3 takeaways, 3 things we can take back to our teams to help them get better by the end of the experience? Okay, tombstone, Deacon Bill Roberts, founder of Walden Grove Baptist Church. I'm going to go fast. Born 1842, died 1912. Blessed be his name. Bill Roberts, great-great-grandfather, Panola County, Carthage, Texas. I'm a 5th generation East Texan. We have this tombstone behind the Walden Grove Baptist Church. The 1870 Panola County records record this man has 160 acres. In the year 1870, enslaved man 5 years after the end of the Civil War has 160 acres. We have no record of how, I have some suspicions, but my dad says, this is the reason why you will never have any excuses. And I said, okay. I'm 8. He said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm thinking to myself, I am living from bowl of cereal to bowl of cereal, right? It's like Fruity Pebbles or Cap'n Crunch. But my family had taken a trip to Austin, Texas. We'd gone to the Capitol. I can remember standing in the rotunda, looking at all the portraits, and I just blurt out, I want to be governor of Texas, right? My dad says, by what age? All right, so even before, this is 1985. This is before SMART goals. My dad was keen on it being measurable. So I thought, like, man, in my mind I'm thinking, what's a number that gives me a lot of time? I said 40, right? 40 seemed like just ages into the future. And like I said, I'll be 47 in November. Obviously, I'm not governor, thank God. Obviously, I took a wrong turn somewhere, but this lands me, I get to 11th grade. Look at that guy. That's a strapping 5'10 and a half, 161.2 pound, strong safety for your Mount Pleasant Fighting Tigers. My dad comes to me and he says, Daron, you're not that good at football. I'm like, wow. Parents are there for encouragement, right? Positive reinforcement and all that stuff. He said, look, if you bring a grade in here lower than a 90, you cannot play football. I said, okay. I said, I wasn't planning on doing that anyway. He said, look, just so you know, have fun with your friends. Don't invest too much in sports. So my dad is a guy that, from the pulpit, my dad in 53 years has never spoken about a sporting event from the pulpit. And the reason why he told me is this. I mean, we went deep into the playoffs. This is at the old Cowboy Stadium. We were semifinals. He said, you know what? You don't have to search, Daron, you don't have to search for praise or positive reinforcement when it comes to sports. But if you make an A on a chemistry exam, no one cares. So from his pulpit, he's like, look, I'm going to preach the gospel, but I'm going to also promote academics. So I knew I wasn't going to go play college football, but I did get an offer from Austin College in Sherman, Texas. Does anyone know the mascot, Austin College, Sherman, Texas? Fighting Kangaroos. Some of you remember this. The Fighting Kangaroos. I don't take them up on the offer. I go to the University of Texas. It's 1997. Enrollment is 50,500. It's the biggest in terms of student body university in the country. I get there. I have my journal entry from my senior year of high school. University of Texas. This was the plan to get to the governor's mansion. Student body president, Harvard Law School, practiced in Houston for 4 years. Returned to Mount Pleasant, practiced for 4 years. State Senate, governor's mansion. I mean, I had the color scheme for the carpets and the drapes. This thing was locked and loaded. Do you remember when you believed in linear life plans? Is that too long ago? You know, when you're young, you've got this plan, and if A then B, if B then C, if C then D, and it's gonna line up, and then what happens? Life starts lifing. Life starts lifing, right? The second divorce, the third move, the fifth job, and you look up and you're like, man, it's great to have a plan, but like I said earlier at the beginning of my talk, the ability to be agile and willing to pivot is going to be of the utmost value moving forward. So I get to UT, I get elected student body president, I check the box, I apply to Harvard Law School, I get waitlisted. Here's how the letter read. Dear Daron, we like you. Unfortunately, we like so many more people more than we like you. In the highly unlikely event that all of those people tell us no, we may reach back out to you. But if you have any options for law school that does not include Harvard Law School, please take advantage of them, all right? So I'm distraught. I'm walking around campus, sackcloth and ashes. A mentor calls me on Thursday and he says, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm just trying to figure out next steps. And he said, okay, you got to be in D.C. on Monday. I'm like, excuse me? Now, mind you, this is 2001. He goes, you're going to work for Joe Lieberman. You got to be there on Monday. And I said, what? What happened? Many of you will remember this. Jim Jeffords, Vermont, switches to independent. Majority of the Senate goes to the Dems. So all of these former ranking members now turn into chair, right? They're the chair of the committee, and they have an entire staff to fill. So I get to D.C., and I take a Greyhound bus from downtown Austin. I get to D.C. It's June of '01. I don't want to be there, right? Like, the goal was law school. The last place I want to be is sitting in Dirksen. June of '01, July of '01, August of '01, September the 10th of '01, I am working on education bills, all right? September the 12th, national security bills. So I get a front row seat, whatever you want to call it, crisis management, public policy, you name it, a front row seat into one of the most tumultuous times in our nation's history, in a place where I don't want to be. I'm going to make this point later in my talk. We're going to talk about growing through what you go through. And I don't care how old you are, I don't care how many years you have in the industry. You've lived long enough to know that there are some things that you've seen that you didn't predict. So I spend 2 years there. I'm still reapplying to the law school. I go to the Kennedy School for a master's. I finally get into the law school in '04. 4 straight years of being waitlisted, finally get in. Back on track. Governor's mansion. So I'm going through doing my thing. I've got a high school buddy. Was a coach at a place called Pflugerville Conley, north of Austin. And he and I played high school football together. He calls me up and he says, hey man, what are you doing this summer? I said, well, I just finished my clerkship. I don't know what the second half's gonna look like. I think I'm gonna take it off. He goes, hey man, I have to work the Steve Spurrier football camp at the University of South Carolina. I said, okay. He's like, you should just ride with me. Let's take a road trip. And I said, I don't know if I wanna do that. He's like, oh, it'll be fun. So we go. We get here, get to the camp, boom. This guy comes out. All these coaches are waiting the night before the camp. He's like, hey, are there any volunteer coaches? One of our coaches didn't show up. Here's what I'm thinking to myself. Let me take you back because you've forgotten what this looks like. Boom, that's going through my head. That's going through my head. I'm thinking to myself, first of all, no offense to this great state. I'm from Texas, okay? I'm from Texas. We do a good job through the mandatory Texas history and Texas state government of indoctrinating the youth in my state. I said, if anybody can coach some 6th graders, it's this guy, all right? Friday Night Lights. I mean, our town shut down. You talk about town shutting down. Our town literally shut down every Friday, like literally. You drive through, you exit I-30 on a Friday between 6:30 and 9:30. You're not getting any gas and you're not getting any food. Keep going. Shut down. So I said, hey, look, I can coach these kids. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, this could be fun. And I start to raise my hand and my buddy says, don't get us kicked out of this camp. I said, don't worry about it. I raise my hand. Coach Sparrow. Coach, what's your name? Coach Roberts, right? Put a little bass in my voice. Coach Roberts. Where do you coach? So now we have to lie, right? Mount Pleasant High School. He looks at me. He goes, Mount Pleasant High School? Yes, sir. I mean, we're in too deep now, right? You just got to go with it. He says, man, there's a lot of good talent in Mount Pleasant High School. I said, yes, sir. He said, we're glad to have you, coach. I said, I'm glad to be here. He says, you have group 6, okay? Group 6 consisted of 66th graders. 66th graders. None of whom had any athletic talent whatsoever. Listen, I'm going to provide my email address at the end of this talk. Do not send me the huddle film for your little Johnny or your nephew Bob. I've had every week, unsolicited, some parent I don't know sends me, wait, do you guys know what huddle is? It's like this, if you got some, it's just, basically your kid can put up their high school tape, their videos and highlights or lowlights. I've got some parents saying, hey, I want you to look at Bobby's tape. We think he's got a shot at D1. He'll be a senior in the fall. Now, the first thing I know is if you think he's got a shot at D1 and he's going to be a senior in the fall, that fact pattern doesn't match up. Johnny should be getting recruited out the wazoo. You should have more paraphernalia from colleges scattered throughout your home right now. And I watched this tape and Johnny's something 5'8.5", 121-pound dude running around. All right? These were the kinds of kids that I had in my group. So I go to Academy, I buy a bucket hat, I buy some sunglasses, a whistle. It's time to get official. I'm Googling Tony Dungy, defensive back drills. Deion Sanders, defensive back drills. Mike Tomlin, defensive back drills. And I stayed up until midnight writing down my drills. I had my cone set up. I did this camp for 3 days. First time in my life, I didn't have to set my alarm clock to get up. So I want you to write this down. Notice what lights me up. Write it down. I'm serious about it. It's not don't just look at me. You take out a writing utensil, and I want to put on some paper. Notice what lights me up. Some of you are thinking, it's too late for that. I'm just doing my thing. It's not. Listen, at your level, right, you're serving various functions. So I coach a CEO, and what he had to realize 6 months into the engagement was that the skill level that got him to become CEO wasn't going to help him not just survive, but be a really good CEO, right? So now he had to manage humans. He also had to manage his time, which he had never done. So we had to find out where were his strengths, where should he lean in on the business, and then we've got to get rid of everything else, right? We've got to put all of those responsibilities and tasks in other people's hands because his skill set was limited. He had to focus in a very small space. And I think that the older you get and the more refined you get in the way that you look at problem solving, you'll find that, look, it's great to go broad, but you're probably known for something very narrow. If you're good at what you do. If you're good at what you do, you're known for a very particular style of problem solving so that when people are talking about a certain issue, you say, oh, yeah, you got to talk to James, right? So I want you, even regardless of where you are in your life, right? I want you to notice what lights you up. So I noticed that this coaching thing is good stuff. I fly back into Logan Airport. I go up to a payphone. I put a quarter in. I call 903-572-7384. Gwen Roberts, my mother, picks up, and I said, Mom, I want to be a football coach. She said, that's great. Let me put your dad on the phone. Dad gets on the phone. You want to be a football coach? Yes. Do you know how much debt you're in, Daron? Yes, right? Bank of America was priming me with these mailings just to let me know. First of all, they were very excited I was about to graduate. Yay. But they also wanted me to know that 6 months from my graduation, all right, they were going to hunt me down in any corner of the earth, right? And they were going to find me so that I could start repayment. And I said, Dad, now look, every Sunday at about 12:25, you're telling people that they're going to die at some point and they need to make the right choice for their life and their maker. I said, now you're telling me to wait until retirement to coach. Who says I get to retirement? Who says I get there? And my dad says, well, listen, Daron, remember the deal was you're on the hook for grad and law school. We paid for undergrad. I said, well, Dad, technically, I didn't want to bring this up. You really didn't pay for undergrad. He's like, what? I said, remember, I got a full ride to go to UT. So you owe me money. Right? About $68,429.92 to be exact. Who's counting? That's without interest, right? School was cheap then. So my dad prays for me on the phone. I write a letter to every team in the NFL. How many are there? Yeah, what teams do you care about? What are you fans of? Who do you root for? Packers. Okay. In general, college, just D1, yeah. All right, so I write a letter to every team in the NFL. I get all the no's. I get a yes from this guy. Lifelong friend, mentor. Calls me up. He says, I don't know what's wrong with you. I've got this letter on my desk. My assistant, Catherine, put a sticky on it that said, don't know if something's wrong with him, but give him a call. All right? Gives me a call. He's like, look, don't coach football. I said, excuse me, coach? He's like, don't do this. You know, he goes, look, graduate from law school, go practice, do the whole suburban, like Tahoe and white picket fence. He goes, don't do this. I said, what do you mean? He's like, I said, coach, you're a coach. Because that's why I'm telling you, don't coach. He said, I've got an offer for you. Training camp internship, no pay, no benefits, 18-hour days. I say yes. I graduate June the 6th from law school, 2007. I jump in my beat-up Tahoe. I drive from Cambridge, Mass. to Kansas City, Missouri. I get there, and I'm the grunt. All right? So if the offensive linemen need barbecue sandwiches, I'm the guy that gets the call. All right? If the defensive linemen need... I can tell this is a very refined crowd, so this is chewing tobacco, okay? I would purchase as much wintergreen skull as a U.S. citizen is allowed to purchase in a 24-hour time span. I mean, it would get to the point to where I would go to this Citgo, Exxon, Chevron, and when I would pull up, they'd be like, oh, there's the guy. And they'd send somebody in the back, and they'd bring me the boxes, and I'd pay him go. All right? That's through training camp. I volunteer for the entirety of the season. And we get to the end of the season, this thing called Black Monday. All right? This is when coaches get fired. And I watch 4 coaches walk into Herm's office, and they walk out with 2 things, a dolly and a security guard. All right? They've got 45 minutes to clear their belongings from Arrowhead. So Catherine comes to my office, which is a converted closet. We torn the door off the hinges, and I'm sitting there. She says, Coach Edwards would like to see you. I was like, I said, Catherine, am I getting fired? She goes, I don't know. So I start walking. Then I think to myself, you know, technically I can't get fired. In 7 months in Arrowhead, I had not signed a single piece of paperwork. This was like a black ops mission. If you were to Google my name and Kansas City Chiefs, in 2007, nothing would come up. So I walk in and I sit down, and Herm says, first thing I want to tell you, Daron, is I really appreciate all of your contributions. I just hang my head. Right? So I took a few business school classes, and there's something called the termination sandwich. Have you heard of this? So the research shows that when you let someone go, you should serve them a termination sandwich. All right? That bottom bun is a compliment. That juicy patty, it's the termination, okay? And then you send them on their way. That top bun is also a compliment on the way out. The research says this is the right way to do it. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to get fired from an internship. I hear this paper slide across the desk. It's an 18-page contract, and it reads, coaching contract. Herm says, look, I don't know why I'm doing this. There's a guy that I was working for on staff named Gunther Cunningham. He's like, look, Gunther stood on the table for you. Here you go. I took out my Pilot V5 Precise pen. I signed page 18. I turned it back into him. And he says, son, do they still teach contract law in law school? I said, yes, sir. He says, you didn't read a single word. I said, well, there's one thing I know is when I have zero leverage. This is a big problem right now, actually, both at the macro and the micro level. Understanding what leverage you have. I understood I had none. So I signed it and went to work. Now, I spent 2 years in Kansas City. Get fired, beep, beep, beep. The thing backs in. Detroit Lions, where's my guy? There you are, right there. Y'all are looking good. You may be a quarterback away, and I know you don't want to hear that. But my oldest son was born in Henry Ford Hospital. His room is painted in maize and blue, wants to go to Michigan, loves the Lions. So I hope for you and him that you guys do it. I spent 2 years there. I go to West Virginia for 2. We get fired. Beep, 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 beep. Last year with America's team, the Cleveland Browns, baby. The Cleveland Browns. We go 4-12, December 29th, 2013. Pittsburgh, we lose to the Steelers. Boom. Get back on the plane, get off the plane. The owner's chief of staff, all the coaches have a text message. 8 a.m. staff meeting with the owner. All right, we go in there and sit down. Jimmy Haslam walks in, 8 o'clock. Hey guys, appreciate all of your contributions. My wife and I wish you all well. You're all fired. Thank you. Meeting began at 8 o'clock, meeting ended at 8:01. Second time in NFL history that a staff had been fired after the first year. A full-time staff, right? Not an interim coach, those don't count. After the first year, right? On a 3-year deal. So I go home, getting ready to get the U-Haul trucks cranked up again. Start scrambling eggs. Oldest son comes up. He says, hey, you ate breakfast? I said, nothing. I just kept scrambling. Comes back, you ate breakfast. My wife grew up on a ranch in Leavenworth, Kansas, does not pull any punches. And I asked her, what's wrong with him? She said, when was the last time you had breakfast with Dylan? Maybe write that sentence down. When was the last time I had breakfast with, you probably don't have a Dylan, but let's just have a space mark there. Someone you care about. When was the last time that happened? And the irony hit me that I've been spending all of my time with other people's sons, and my own son did not know that I ate breakfast. It's fascinating. Your flesh and blood will barely remember the majority of your professional accomplishments. Like the thing that really stood out to you, like that landmark year or that big time award you won in 2019, if you were to ask your kids now or 5 years later, they couldn't tell you. But they remember the soccer games, right? I have from ages 14 to 8. So I've got this pretty good distributions. Boy, girl, boy, girl, boy. And man, I had a blowout year in my business, and everybody, I'm excited about it, and we have Sunday family meetings from 7 to 8, right? So we talk about the week and highlights, lowlights, shout-outs, all the things. And I'm talking to my kids this year. They don't even remember that. They don't remember. They do remember if I'm late for basketball practice. That's what they remember. So in this grand scheme of life and how you're ordering your time, just think about how your priorities lay out. Okay, so I decided I'm not coaching anymore. I go back to UT. I start a Center for Sports Leadership and Innovation with Kevin Durant. And then in 2022, I realized something. This is my COVID realization. I can't work with people. So I left UT, and I've been on my own for the last 3 years. I've got a few points. All right, and then I'm going to talk about Microwins, and you're going to ask me some questions. We're going to go fast. Number 1, complacency is the enemy. I want you to write this down. You tattoo it on your forehead, write it on your arm, do whatever you have to do. Woo! It is the enemy. Here's a problem you're going to have. There is so much information. What's important, though? How do you distill all of the data and the trends and the outlooks into what's important for you and your people? That's going to be a problem. So unless you have a very clear picture of what your priorities are, it will be information overload. What you can't do is grow complacent. Because complacency assumes the status quo will remain. And as I said at the beginning of my talk, and I don't care where you fall on the political spectrum, there ain't no status quo. That's a little East Texas parlance. There ain't no status quo, whether you like it or not. So we have to fight complacency at every turn. Number two, hope is not a strategy. It's not. It's not. It's not. The older I get, the more strategic and intentional I become, the less optimistic. I'm not saying I don't think things will turn out well. Who knows? I just know that I have a family, and so my utmost value to them is to ensure we're not surprised, right? I can't afford to be surprised. Same thing for your business. You can't afford to be surprised in the future, right? So think really through. We talk about strategic plans, and I know we get together at various points in the calendar, and we kind of put things together, and then you go back, and you forget about everything that happened at the off-site meeting. Really think about what that strategy looks like, and then go through what you go through. I mean, anyone who's honest, regardless of where you fall, from an age perspective, like you're still learning. You are still learning. There are some new things that are coming around the horizon. You're like, man, I had no clue. You talk about AI, and I'm in Austin, Texas, and I have, from at every point in this pipeline on the construction side, I mean, all the conversations that I have with my buddies are about this thing and how we can't move fast enough. We can't move fast enough. We can't move fast enough. So the question becomes like, how do we take this monolithic thing and figure out what's the value proposition for us? What does that look like? I'm gonna get to Microwins. I'm gonna ask you for questions. What do you think makes it hard for humans to achieve goals? Just throw out some one-word answers. What do you think? The research says that we're really bad. What was that word? Fear. What else? Ooh, that's really good. Got a good crowd here, James. Money. Woo! Time. We got the greatest hits here. You got time and money and fear, sacrifice, attitude. This brings us to Planet Fitness. Look, all of my discretionary income goes into 529s, SIPs, and so I am cheap on the market. Like I'm a cheap guy. I'm cheap, right? Which brings me to Planet Fitness, where for $9.99, you have 24/7 access to a place that's probably not clean, but the lights are on. Now, January the 2nd, you go in there, man, the Aloe, the Lululemon, Nike. I mean, there are people doing curls on the Treadmaster. Yeah? I mean, it's standing room only. I mean, everyone's got their phone. They're watching their favorite Instagram personality, and they're getting fit. So the research tells us that February the 2nd, 82% of New Year's resolutions are either forgotten or broken. And what do you think happens? Lack of instant results. So man, you're drinking the lemon water. You've got green smoothies out the wazoo. Man, those Yetis are filled to the brim. And after week one, you look in the mirror and you say, where's my six-pack? You've been getting up at 4:30, putting in the time. So what happens is that when the brain perceives that the action is not being rewarded, it wants to shut down. In case you didn't know this, we're engineered, your brain is engineered to keep you at homeostasis. Take you back to some 6th grade biology. I remember homeostasis, right? This is this level state, not too hot, not too cold, right? The measurables and the indicators, if you're a dashboard, homeostasis is you're cruising at a rate in which you can rest, regenerate. The problem is most of our goals lie north of that line. Like those big scary ones lie north of that, which means that we've got to do some math and we've got to look at this not from achieving a big goal, how can we make incremental growth? So let's do a little bit of math, not too much. Just a little smidget over 1% growth. All right? 365 days. If you were to get incrementally just over 1% better, by the end of that 365-day period, you're looking at a 38x improvement. 38x. So you identify the skill, you identify the shortcoming, you identify where you want to improve. If you have the discipline and the willingness to not judge any short-term results, but to stay the course, you're looking at 38x, right? 38x. So that 29-day mark where people are like, I'm just going to go ahead, forget about that. I'm not going to get up at 4:30 if it comes to fitness or if it comes to the craft, or I'm not going to read these extra books or listen to these podcasts. I know enough. I've been in the business long enough, right? You're missing this kind of growth. Now, I'm going to talk about 3 domains: work, family, health. Write that down. You probably know this already. Work, family, health. This is what moves us and makes us go. Work, family, and health. Work, family, and health. Some of you have been living long enough to know, that if something is off in either one of these 3 categories, there is collateral damage. You kind of go along when you're young thinking, okay, they're segmented. But now, if something is off in health, it will spill into your family. Man, you could be having a blowout year in work, but if things aren't right at home, it'll cancel it out quickly. And really, in this health category, people always say, well, what about my faith? Here's what I will tell you. I want you to interpret health as widely as you need to, all right? So that's psychological, religious, mental, whatever it means to you. But the one thing we know is when it comes to physical health, that's the one area you can't fake. When it starts to teeter, everything falls. So we're going to identify these 3 categories as the key ones. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to put together a system of micro-wins. Micro-wins are just small units of victory. Small units of victory that chip away at macro wins. Small units of victory that chip away at macro wins. So one of the problems with human psychology and humans in general is that we identify big goals and we go very hard for a short period of time, and then we stop. And what I'm asking you to do with micro-wins is to say, identify big goal, but I'm going to ask you to take intentionally small steps on a consistent basis. Small steps on a consistent basis. So when we think about the micro-wins, they've got to feed into these macro-wins. What are the big goals for your life and work, family, and health? I have a body test. Is it bold? Is it aspirational? Is it worth it? Is it delusional? And then why not? And then why not? I've written 3 nonfiction books, and now I'm 62,000 words into a novel. I've never written fiction. I went to a writer's workshop in Townsend, Tennessee, the Tremont in the Smoky Mountains for a week, and I told my wife, I got on the phone and I said, I'm not flying back. I'm going to test this Hertz rental car policy. I'm going to drive from Tremont, Tennessee to Austin, Texas, because I am going to start writing fiction. And my wife's been with me 15 years. She knows me enough to know this is how I am. But I said, I've got to make a complete shift. I speak and I write. That's what I do. But the problem for a lot of us, and I'm going to use your laser trick here. Here we go. Look at that. I think some of us have given up. I think some of us look at our track record. Maybe you're peeking at actuarial charts. You're looking at account balances. You're thinking about decades in the business. I think a lot of us have said, you know what? I'm just going to coast. I'm just going to coast. I'm just going to coast. I'm fine. I'm just going to coast. And what I will tell you is, it's not too late. It's not too late, right? Like, as long as you have breath and air and you're moving, it's not too late. You know, you don't have to tell anyone, right? This is an internal conversation. But the one thing I know, I work with enough leaders and enough organizations across sectors to know that this is a thing that I keep hearing in my conversations with people. Like, I just don't know if I don't know if I have it in me right now. You do. You do. You do. Here we go. Macro wins. We're going to boil those macro wins down into micro wins. This is all in the book that you're going to get, okay, because of James. James bought all of you a book. I signed them there over here. I'm going to fly through this, but this is important, okay? So a team at Wharton does some research. They team up with at the business school, but they team up with some psychologists, and they're looking at goal achievement. So this number on the right is the probability of success. So just from conception, I have a goal, just conception, you have a 12% probability that you're going to actually achieve the goal. It's like, oh, I like to do something. Everybody can do it. Commitment. What they found was that if you tell at least 2 other people, and I tell my kids, you know why? Kids will hold you accountable. See, because their prefrontal cortexes aren't developed, they don't have that filter that we get as adults, where we kind of talk around things, right? We have to translate adult language. Kids just say what they're thinking. So I tell my kids what my goals are and my micro wins are, and they call me out. Hey, Dad, you said you were going to do X. Did you do that? I didn't do that. So it goes to 27%. The calendar. Look, I know that if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. That includes work and family. And I used to have a problem reducing my family to the calendar. But the year that I paid our babysitter for 52 date nights, you know, every year I was going to spend more time with my wife. And every year I didn't spend more time with my wife. So I paid my babysitter for 52 date nights in January, and I told her they were non-refundable. She's like, what? She's like, I don't know if I can take all this money at one time. I said, you can. Venmo. Guess what? Guess what we started doing? We started going on date nights, right? Because the psychology is having skin in the game, just a gentle nudge can be enough to shift behavior. So you calendar, you're getting close to 50%. The critiquing part is if you can bring in a level of self-awareness to ask yourself, okay, I'm kind of falling short. What is it? What is it? For example, in my workout regimen, I could not get on a consistent workout scheme, and I figured this out. I was the kind of guy that if I woke up and I couldn't find a sock, I'd just say, well, the universe wants me to sleep more. So people talk about morning routines. I believe in night routines. By my bed, you will see the shirt and the shorts and the socks and the shoes. I give myself very little room for deviation because I don't consider myself to be a very disciplined person, so I have to have constraints. I have to impose constraints. So just critiquing and being honest with yourself about where you're falling short gets you halfway there, and then there's the consistency. And this is where micro wins comes in. You need to find a way to celebrate the small wins. You're trying to write a novel, but you wrote 100 words today. Celebrate that. Celebrate that, right? Celebrate that. Because it gives the brain enough positive reinforcement to keep going. Okay. I'm going to go fast. This is the last point. As the son of a PK, as the son of a Baptist minister, I've attended a lot of funerals, and I've always was surprised that, you would think there were some friends of friends. You're like, oh, so-and-so will be there because she meant so much to him or her. And you get to the funeral, and you're like, man, I knew such and such would be here. They worked for 30 years together. But those first 2 rows, those are the people for whom you leaving will fundamentally shift their lives. It's not just an event that kind of happened, right? For them, they will be impacted, like the trajectory of their lives will be impacted by losing you. So make sure you spend more time with them. Right? I think sometimes we think it has to be like an entire weekend. It may be 15, 20 minutes. I have teenagers, and a lot of them don't, they don't want to talk to me right now. But I just keep talking. I just keep talking. I just stay in the room. I just hang out. And you find they'll circle back around to you when things kind of there's a problem. Right? But spend more time with those folks.